What's up, you guys, IMGs? Welcome to our final episode of 2022. Today, you're going to be listening to what I've compiled as the best of 2022. How do I come up with this? It's based on your downloads. 2022 was awesome for us here at the IMG Roadmap. We had the most downloads yet, and so many of you have been listening till the very end. I want to thank you for spending the year with me. This was the year where I completed fellowship in emergency medicine. It was also our best year yet at the IMG Roadmap course headquarters. I want to just thank you because you have been with me from the very beginning. And I want to give back to you. I have a free calendar for 2023, which outlines your plan as an IMG, especially if you are applying to get into residency in 2024. Go right now to drninaloom.com/calendar. The information will also be in the show notes. But welcome to the best of 2022. Sit back, relax, and listen. The IMG Roadmap is the only podcast dedicated to coaching international medical graduates in success blueprints for this unique pathway. I am Dr. Nina Loom, your host, a previous IMG turned hospital medicine physician, healthcare administrator, speaker, and coach. I empower, encourage, and equip you with actionable steps that you can take towards the residency position of your dreams.
They might have more in store in them. So, what do you think? Because there's a lot of people that are in that, okay, I'm doing my 9 to 5, but I hate it, but I want entrepreneurship. And then there's some people that are going into entrepreneurship knowing that they're actually not even ready for it. So do you believe that 9 to 5 is for everyone and everybody should do an entrepreneurship? How are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think that entrepreneurship is for everyone, and I don't think 9 to 5 is for everyone. I personally will not leave my 9 to 5 job. That's just me. I am not in that position to do that. It's not my passion to not work. I like working, actually. So I'll always be a physician. But the way in which I'll be a physician will differ. I would not be a physician that is mandated to work. Except when you're in training, you don't have much of a choice because you are, learning, and there's a set schedule for you. There's set rules and things like that. But beyond your training, once you're out of residency training or out of your fellowship training, you can choose to work 9 to 5 if you want. You can choose to do 9 to 5 and be an entrepreneur. You can choose to be an entrepreneur and not do a 9 to 5. I don't have a problem with that. You do what works for you, and to each their own. I am always going to be an entrepreneur. I think I've always been an entrepreneur. Like my mom used to tell me when I was when I was young, I used to sell stuff. Like I used to sell plantain chips. I remember selling secondhand clothes, and this is all back home in Cameroon. My brother had he opened a restaurant at one point, and I was serving people at that restaurant. I used to go clean at my mom's private practice. My job was to clean the windows, and she would pay us, right? So there are things that I used to do as a child that were entrepreneurship that I didn't even think of. When I was in med school, I used to sell weaves, hair weaves. I'll buy from a girl that went to med school in China, and she'll send them to me, and I'll resell them. And I made profit. So, I never woke up one day, I was like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And that's why I don't even see what I do directly as entrepreneurship, because I didn't wake up and say I'm going to start blogging to be an entrepreneur. I was just blogging because I was in a hard place. And in the process of doing that, it evolved and evolved and evolved into where I realized that based on all my hardship, I'd acquired a lot of wisdom that I could share with other people. So I think to each their own. I think once you go in with the mindset that I must quit my 9 to 5 to be an entrepreneur, you're missing the mark. Or once you go in with the mindset that I must be an entrepreneur, or I must be a 9 to 5 and I can't be an entrepreneur, you're missing the mark. I think everybody, yourselves. I can't tell you.
So I think it's important to note that just because that's the case, one, you could be the first one. You could be the first person that goes to whatever Ivy League prestigious school or residency program after being an IMG. Apply. Worst case scenario, they say no. So I don't think that people need to necessarily say it's impossible, but just looking at the objective facts, they just don't look at us as much. So there are just fewer options. That being said, like, I love the training that I got at Hahnemann. It was a inner city hospital, and I felt like we were sprinting through the day every day, and I got fantastic training. And, you know, I don't think you need to necessarily go to the most prestigious program in the world. It sounds nice. It does. And if you're going to stay in academia, that continues. That prestige and that issue of trying to get a job at a prestigious place as an attending physician will continue. And the challenges as an IMG, even if you go to somewhere like a good residency university program for residency, it's still there that you're an IMG even going into fellowship. You know, I don't think that any program director will ever go on Word or on Twitter or on a podcast and say this outright. But all you got to do is look at their current fellows and current residents and see where they go. So I think that's the biggest thing that we have to acknowledge, that when you become an IMG as a US resident, that it's okay to go Caribbean, but you need to have informed consent. Like, you got to know what you're getting into. It's just like a medical procedure. Like, it's okay that you do this route. Clearly people have succeeded. And even when you said like, oh, this guy might not be relatable. He's a cardiologist. He's a white American. He had it easy. Like, it sounds really nice that I went to med school in the Caribbean and then residency, and now I'm a cardiology fellow and I'm going to get a job as a cardiologist. But it doesn't feel like a straight line. And there's a whole lot of anxiety and stress that goes into that. And there's so
We're just like very uncertain of this whole end of year, and this was very out of their comfort zone, and they were just like, it was like a shock to them, and to explain to them how much it would cost and what the process was, it was just like something that they could not wrap their head around. And so I like initially, like I knew like I had to figure it out mostly on my own. So I funded 80% of my journey on my own. So otherwise, like doing it from India was again a boon, because I think I did not really spend that much compared to people who have had to like fund themselves for 1 or 2 years in the States. The other thing was just, I think, like society and family in general, like they were always like, okay, you're taking a gap year, what are you doing? You're sitting at home studying for an exam. There are always like questions. And I have an actual sister who started residency like as soon as she graduated. We were like twins. So there was always like constant comparison. Okay, she's like doing residency, what are you doing? How long will it take? And everybody's like, oh, when are you going to the States? Nobody like really understood the process. Even like my med school batchmates and juniors, they just saw it like a big ambitious dream. While I didn't really see it like an ambitious dream, I just saw it like a path. So I couldn't like really tell the struggles I was facing. To them, it just seemed like a rosy ordeal that they did not understand. Other than that, and then there were not a lot of seniors. Like in India, there are multiple medical colleges who have very fixed paths to USMLE. They have like 10-15 students every year go to the States, and they match properly. So they have tie-up for electives. They have a lot of attendings, residents that they can contact. And they tell you like from second year, if you want to do USMLE, participate in that, go into that committee, do that research. And we didn't have like, I say we because there were like 4 of us that applied to the match together. So we didn't have any of that guidance. So a lot of like, I feel like regretful sometimes because like I said, like I was doing research, but in internship year, when I started searching for opportunities, I felt like, oh my God.
You may also have other things in your way that you haven't really pinpointed yet. For example, you may be thinking that, oh, you're from a low-tier Caribbean school. What are your options, right? You may be thinking this is the 3rd, the 4th time that you're going through the match. What are your options, right? You may be thinking that you're not competitive enough. You don't have the great scores. So that's why you're looking for research. You're looking for all these other things to add on to your arsenal to make you better, right? And those are not wrong things. But what I want you to do today is I want to give you some key tools that you can apply so that you can start checking off these boxes that you need to check off. So why did I say, let's come together and talk about your most challenging tasks? Whenever you have a goal, your goal starts off with the vision, right? You have this grand scheme of what you want out of your life. So you look at social media, you know physicians, you've seen the landscape of practice in the US and you decided this is what you want to do. You want to be a physician in the United States. You want to be a physician in practice. You also want to be a resident. You actually want to help people. You want to open a practice. You want to be a surgeon. You want to be a gynecologist. You have these dreams of being able to help people through healthcare. Those are great dreams. But all in all, it all takes small steps, cumulative small steps in order to achieve your goal. What happens is we take this one big dream and we make it so big, so insurmountable that we cannot get over the hump, right? So the key things, the action plans that I want to give you today are really around self-development. So there are things that you can do as an individual to increase your likelihood of completing your tasks. Number one is self-discipline. You absolutely need self-discipline in order to achieve any goal. So the first thing is self-discipline. In order to be self-disciplined, you need to be clear about what you're going for, which is why I asked you, what are your top 3 most challenging tasks that you have to complete? That could be step 1, step 2, step 3, right? You may have already done.
No, I don't. I do not regret leaving my career as a nurse, going to medical school. I would be lying and saying that there are some days I do think about if I stayed, how my life would have been. For example, and I'm not, financially driven as a means to doing something. Granted, I'm in residency now and I'm making half of what I used to make as a nurse. So I look at these, travel nursing posts, and I see that some people are making $7,000, $8,000 a week, and I'm like, wow, this must be really fun. People are, buying houses, they're going on huge trips, they're doing lots of grand things. Sometimes I'm going to be honest with the audience, that does set in, but then I look at the bigger picture and I say, okay, I went to school, one, to do more for my patients as a whole, because I'm able to take care of my patients with more information. The more information you have, the more you're able to do with that information, right? Secondly, I went to school for an investment in myself. It was an investment in knowledge acquisition. So all the questions that I had in my previous career as a nurse, thank God for medical school, they were answered. And furthermore, in residency, those questions and those answers are now applied in real time.
And say, well, it wasn't that big of a deal, or it just all worked out. But because there's a lot of work that you put in, and that will bring me to the next question that I have for you. So after going through that cycle, getting 4 interviews, getting an interview invitation, and then they retract it, and then having to go through that and not matching. Did you soap that year, or how did you play? What did you do?
So yes, I put in an application for soap, got an interview for prelim, but unfortunately didn't get the offer, so I couldn't start. And that was by far one of the worst times of my life. It was really devastating because I had put in everything, like in my head. Like I thought I had the best application. I thought I had put in everything for that application, and it didn't work out. So honestly, if you're ever going through this phase of your life,
so when I got into the US, you were one of the first people I spoke with. Of course, there's Dr. Enyioha as well. And you guys just made the whole difference, because I didn't know where I was going to get recommendation letters from, and I didn't even know how I was going to proceed. So it was just like asking people left, right, and center. Because to me, prior to even coming to the US, all I was focused on was just like, oh, let me nail the boards. Let me get the best scores I can get. And I thought that was all about it until I got here. And then I realized it was a whole different ball game. Like that's literally just the first part. And then you have this whole other work you have to put in. So it was pretty intense. I would say that.
Yeah. I agree with you in the sense the scores and the boards are great, but I think what people don't realize is that's just like the tip of the iceberg. It's like the scores just open up the doors to say, hey, you're okay to actually apply, right?
Right.
But are you really going to get attention when you apply is the question, because you're with a pool of applicants and there are so many other great applicants with great scores just like you
Oh yeah, way better. When you start going on interview trails, you realize like maybe you were going in there thinking, oh, you're the big dog, and then you hear a couple of people talking, you're like, oh my, geez. It's really intimidating. Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so then you realize that there are other things that.
RA. An RA is a resident assistant. So for those of us that grew up in Africa, it's kind of like a prefect, like someone that's like in charge of, in the community halls where the students live in the school, you're in charge of like a floor of kids, like, you know, like telling them the rules, making sure they're in their rooms at the right time, things like that. But with that it's a job. It's not paid, but it's paid in the sense of you don't have to pay for housing and you don't have to pay for food. So that was a way that I was able to significantly cut my expenses by living on campus and doing that job, you know, going to meetings here and there. Obviously, something I ended up adding into my CV when I was applying to medical school. I did it for 3 years. So it kind of gave me that organizational experience and being able to talk about that as someone who's able to, you know, cater for a group of people and kind of give direction and be orderly and things like that. So when I got into medical school, part of my goals was to focus in medical school, but also to kind of figure out a way to cut my expenses. So I think I had mentioned it to the international students lady, and she told me, oh, you know, a few years ago, they used to sponsor this scholarship where, in essence, they will kind of pay for your full tuition or half of tuition or percentage of it. And then I think by my 3rd or 4th year of medical school, I was having a conversation with her. I just happened to bring it back up, and they had restarted it. And I was able to get that for my last year of medical school. So I didn't pay tuition for the last year of medical school because the International Students Office sponsored that. So there are not so many ways to financially help people when they're international, you know, in college or medical school. But there's some of these resources, you know, but you have to be open to search for them, and you have to be open to ask questions about them, because every little bit helps. But
clinic, we reviewed EKGs, management of congestive heart failure with multiple diseases present in the primary care setting. Then I'm more comfortable that this person may fit in as a first year, because the truth is residency is training you to become a specialized physician. But at the same time, you are working as a physician under supervision. So there will be times that you are in direct contact with the patient by yourself. I want to make sure that this resident has had some contact. And if you put that in your personal statement, that is always very helpful. Things that should not appear in the personal statement. Now, personal statement generally should just be 1 page. That's nice. And when it's too long, then it's just difficult to read and maybe put to the side just because it's too long. We don't want to clutter our personal statement with things that are not pertinent to medicine. Let's not talk about how much struggle we had as a child, living in 1 bedroom with 8 other siblings and going to the farm every day. So you see, now that's just losing. You already just lost me. But if you said from a difficult childhood, you became passionate, just make it really short. So we don't want to have too many things that are not very pertinent to your personal statement. Big deal about your personal statement. Get somebody to read it so that it's in proper English and proper grammar. Just get somebody else who's knowledgeable in English, because some people, English is not their first language. And when the personal statement comes through, it's just too many typos and too many grammatical errors that could work against you as well. So.
It doesn't really seem to budge dramatically, maybe by 1 or 2 points. And this year was no different. There are certain specialties, obviously, that carry a higher match rate for IMGs compared to others. We all know what those are: internal medicine, family medicine. But it's interesting because family medicine, their rate actually, internal medicine has a 3 times match rate for IMGs compared to even family medicine. And to even think about this, there were 465 unfilled spots for family medicine this year. So, and 465 unfilled spots for internal medicine categorical. So there are empty spots across the country right now, still looking to fill their positions. Like, can you even believe that? I wish there was some kind of second match that we could go through, or a third match to fill those spots besides the SOAP. But just to let you guys know, keep your eyes peeled. If you didn't match, there may be options that come up outside of the match. I know people who have matched that way. One of the co-authors of one of the books that I did, Beyond Challenges, which is on my website, she is one of the people I know who match outside of the match. I had another student in the IMG Roadmap course last year who also got a position outside the match. Surgery prelim, number of unfilled spots was 518. Like, what in the world? Okay, categorical only had 3 unfilled spots. And then you have specialties like psych had 17 unfilled spots. Plastic surgery obviously had 0 unfilled spots. It just varies. It's really hard to pinpoint who gets unfilled spots and why they do and why they don't, right? But just kind of going through this data, again, surface level here, internal medicine snagged about 2,435 categorical non-US IMGs. That's 2,435 visas, okay? And then for US IMGs, they snagged 1,133 IMGs. Followed by family medicine that took 457 non-US IMGs and then 777 US IMGs. Whoa. Emergency medicine, they had 45 non-US IMGs and 176 US IMGs. So that was a total of, over 200 EM positions going to IMGs. Now, this is out of 2,921. So obviously, when you factor that in, it's a small portion, but it's there. Dermatology, there was like 1 IMG, that's a non-US IMG that got into derm out of 30 positions. So 1 out of 30. And then there are 2 unfilled derm spots. So who knows who's going to snag that one. Anesthesia, there were 61 non-US IMGs, 57 US IMGs out of 1,500 positions. So a very small portion went to IMGs. And one thing that stood out to me, let's talk about the outliers.